Hello, everybody, and welcome to VTN, the Victory Television Network. And thank you for joining me for today's edition of Arkansas Live. You can see Arkansas Live every morning at 7, every evening at 10. This topic today and this week has been the supreme task of the church. And I hope you've been blessed so far. Stay tuned every day. We're going to continue talking about the supreme task of the church, which is world evangelism. So stay tuned. Arkansas Live starts right now. You know, I said yesterday, if you're going to evangelize the world, you have to stop thinking about us four no more. Now, granted, I understand, as a pastor for over 35 years, you have to minister to the people in the church. You have to raise up the babies. You have to train the adolescents. You have to teach. And let me digress just a minute and run over here real quick to Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 11. I've shared this many times with pastors. They just kind of look at me like I slapped them in the face. But Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11, it said, God gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers for the perfecting of the saints. Did you get that? For the work of the ministry. The pastor can't do it all. He has sent these ministry gifts, the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher, to do what? What's the purpose of these fivefold ministry gifts? To perfect the saints. Why? To mature the saints. Why? So they can do the work of the ministry. Too many churches hire a pastor or an associate or whatever, and they want them to do all the work. That's not biblical. Biblical evangelism is for you to bring in the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher to perfect and mature the saints so the saints can do the work of the ministry. So there is a time, a way, a method for you to train people up in your church to minister to the children, the adolescents, the people that are immature, the people that are baby Christians. And it says, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come in the unity of the faith to a perfect man, and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure, the stature, the fullness of Christ. So, we have to have the fivefold ministry gifts in the church. Pastors, I'm not picking on you, not trying to insult you, or you have to have the fivefold ministry gifts in the church. Your church will never be matured, will never be perfected without the pastor, the apostle, the prophet, evangelist, and teacher. You have to have all five. The pastor alone cannot perfect the church. You cannot mature the church by yourself. Your gift ministry is just one of five. You're the under shepherd. You're responsible for watching for their souls. But you need the evangelist, the apostle, the prophet, and the teacher. So you're just going to have to take inventory. Why don't you have all five gifts, the ministry gifts, in your church on a regular basis? Why don't you have them? Are you afraid? Are you fearful? Are you jealous? Are you envious? You afraid that people will think they're better preachers than you are? No. You got to get rid of that. That's what you're doing is unscriptural if you're not having these fivefold ministry gifts in the church. You have to have them to perfect and to mature the church company. So the Bible is clear that you have to teach. Paul, here, let me read down to chapter 2 in Timothy. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but let me go here anyway. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, Paul told Timothy, he said, therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that's in Christ Jesus, and the things that you have heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. So your job as a pastor is to oversee under Jesus, and you're to shepherd the people, watch for their souls, correct them if they're off in false doctrine or error. Make sure, just like raising a family, just like raising your children. My daddy did that to me. He would sit me down and say, now, son, this is right, this is wrong, here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. You have to do that as a pastor. But you also have to have the apostle, prophet, evangelist, and teacher come in and teach. And your goal is to commit to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. And let me just say this. You can't just, as a wholesale lot, just throw people into the congregation to teach them that you don't know anything about. Buddy Harrison used to say, you follow your favor. You follow your relationship. Everything's by relationship. When I was traveling full time, Jeannie and I traveled for many, many years, even after we turned the church over to our associate. Even then, I would get asked to speak in different churches, and it was by relationship. I had a relationship with these pastors, and they wanted me to come and share. And by the same token, I would have guest ministers come into our church when we pastored for 35 years. There's some that I had come almost monthly. I always had somebody, a gift ministry in there every month, sometimes once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. And it was all by relationship. And I asked one of our gift ministries, who was an evangelist and a teacher, because I had heard that somebody had wanted to have them come to their church, and the traveling ministry sent them a kind of a, I guess it wasn't a contract, but it was close to it. He wasn't saying he wouldn't come if you didn't sign the contract. I never did that. I never had anybody sign any kind of financial agreement or anything like that. But they did. So I asked my friend, because he never said that to me. Every time I'd ask him to come and preach, he'd say, fine, I'll be there on whatever date you want me. And I said, but do you send these instructions out to other ministries? He said, if I don't know them, I do. He said, but I know you. I've known you for years. We have a relationship. I don't have to make sure that I don't get left whole in the bag, so to speak. Oh, I've been in churches like that. They take an offering for you, but you never get the offering. Oh, I've been there. And I learned later what happens. You know, I'll just say this to you pastors. Here's what we used to do. There's a difference between an offering and an honorarium. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, about how you're going to finance this worldwide revival. Evangelism, the supreme task of the church. There's a difference between an honorarium and an offering. And you need to make sure that it's understood between you and the guest minister, apostle, prophet, evangelist, teacher. You need to make sure that it's understood by both parties whether they are going to be blessed with an honorarium, which in most cases is a fixed amount, or whether they're going to come for an offering, which determines how they use their faith. I always ask people, is this going to be an honorarium or an offering? And if I have a relationship with them, I don't even have to ask that. I know what it's going to be. But if I don't know them, am I coming for an offering or an honorarium? And if they say, oh, well, this is our minister's conference and there's going to be so many people here, we're going to give you an honorarium. Usually everybody gets the same amount. But if it's just me and I'm just coming in there for a service and they say, we're going to receive an offering for you, I say, okay, well, then I can use my faith. I can use my faith for that offering. You understand what I'm saying? But when I get there and they take an offering and then they give me a fixed amount, which is an honorarium, I don't know what came in that offering. I don't know, because I had my faith out for so much and, you know, I didn't get so much. So what we used to do is we used to tell the guest ministers, if they come in, and I would say, we're going to receive an offering for you, then whatever amount of money came in for the offering, in our accounting department, I instructed them to do this, and they made a little slip that they would stick in the offering envelope to give to the minister. And I said, I want you to list the exact amount that came in the offering. Let's say the exact amount that came in the offering was $400. I said, then I want you to put offering amount $400. But if you in your heart want to bless that minister and want to give him $1,000, then I would have under there, the church added $600 to it. Total amount, $1,000. In other words, the traveling gift ministry was able to use their faith, and you added something to it, but at least they knew what came in the offering. Many times you never know what comes in the offering. You're just given a certain amount. And I have learned over the years the hard way. I've been in churches where they say, now we want to give a good offering to the Caldwells and we want to bless them, blah, blah, blah. So everybody give. And then we might be there 2 or 3 days. And the time we leave, they give us a check for $100. I know better than that. I wasn't born, I was born in the morning, but I wasn't born yesterday morning. In fact, we were staying in a home of a family in South Louisiana many years ago. And they were a member of this particular church, and they knew we had a need. We needed a new van. Our van was worn out and getting ready to kick the bucket, so to speak. And we were believing God for a new van. And the associate minister that received the offering, he even said this to the congregation. He said, now, the Caldwells need a new van. Let's all join together and whatever you feel led to give towards their van. Well, we got through with our meetings, and we were sitting at the breakfast table of the family that we knew very well. In fact, our son stayed with him when he went to Bible college. And the wife, she was, very, how would I say, inquisitive. And she was so excited that they had taken an offering for us in our van. And she said, I don't want to be nosy, but please tell us, how much did you get for your van? And I said, well, we got $1,000. Oh, my Lord, she looked at me like this, gritted her teeth, and she said, that does it. She said, my husband and I gave $1,000 ourselves. So they did not give us the full offering. And we found out later they kept part of the offering for themselves, the church did. And they just gave us what they wanted us to have. Well, I've had that happen too many times. That's not honest. That God can't bless that. And that church really doesn't exist anymore. Now, this was many, many years ago. But if you're going to bless the gift ministries, you have to be honest about it. If that's what came in the offering, then give them the offering and say, we wanted to add to that, and here's the total. But if you're going to take an offering, don't give them an honorarium. So and I know what people do. They say, well, I'm going to give you an honorarium, and I'm going to ask people to give an offering, and that'll help take care of part of the honorarium. That's not totally honest either. So if you're going to evangelize the world, you're going to have to do it according to the Scriptures. And you're going to have to make missions a priority. And you're going to have to tell people, and you're going to have to explain to people. You have to put it on the platform or in the bulletin or in the announcements or something to encourage people. Now, we had a mission school. We had a world evangelism mission school where we trained people to be missionaries. We had a missionary base in Belize, and we sent those that wanted to be missionaries after they graduated from our Bible school. They'd go to Belize for a year or 6 months or whatever, and they would learn about doing business and ministering in a third world country. And Belize was good because they spoke English, and their currency they would use Belizean dollars and U.S. dollars. So it was an easy conversion. But nevertheless, we wanted them to go to these countries. And then later, as the program grew, we would send the young missionaries, new missionaries, to serve and work for the older senior missionaries. And they were learning constantly. And still some of those missionaries today are still in ministry. So if you're going to be turned outward, not inward, you're going to have to make missions a priority. You're going to have to inform the people. You're going to have missions Sundays. You're going to have missions programs, missions giving to help people. We built a training center in Belize. We built churches all over the world, sent missionaries all over the world. And you're going to have to make the people aware of it. You're going to have to put it in the bulletin, on the platform, on the giant screen. And you're going to have to teach and train national missionaries. That's what we did. We trained people. We built Bible schools and churches, and they were all sent out from the mother church. Did you get it? There's no such thing as brother and sister churches. It's the mother church. The mother church is the one that births these other churches. And you have to teach the people to tithe and to give offerings. And we also separated missions giving. And we would promise, when we were able to, we would promise the missionaries a certain amount of support every month. Otherwise, they raised their own support. So you have to teach people, Malachi 3, verse 10, bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And God will bless that. God will bless the church that's giving the tithe. So you have to train not only people to give, but you can train, I wrote down here, you can train Christian entrepreneurs. We had some of those in our congregation. We had people, I know we had some businessmen that their whole purpose for making money was to supply missions, was to supply missionary giving. And they supported the missionary program. If you don't build a worldwide church, worldwide vision, then you're going to get turned inward. And I'm thinking of a man who came to see me one time. Now, we had just started our church. We were still in the shopping center. And he was a missionary in Mexico, and there was a missionary down there that had died, and he had several churches. And so this brother went down there to oversee those churches and take that responsibility. And he came by to see us here in Little Rock. I think he was in Victoria, Mexico. Anyway, he came to see us. And so I asked him, I said, now, tell me why you're in Mexico. I mean, I had a reason for asking that. Why are you in Mexico? What are you doing? What are you teaching? He said, well, I'm in Mexico to teach the Mexican church how to become Americans. I shook my head. I said, no, that's not right. You don't need to teach them how to become Americans. You need to teach them how to be Christians, not Americans. So he changed his direction in ministry. And then I asked him what he needed. I said, what do you need down there? What can we bless you with? He said, well, we need a van that we can transport people to and from, to haul our equipment, because I went to some of their churches, and they're out in the desert and the boonies and along the seashore, and you know, they've got wooden benches, and you're sitting there in the sand or the dirt, and the pigs and the chickens are running underneath the benches, and you know, it was primitive. He said, we need a van to haul our PA system, that kind of stuff. Well, we had just purchased and built a new van for ourselves to travel, but we didn't travel as much as we used to because we were pastoring the church. So the Holy Spirit spoke to me to give him that van. I gave him that van. Oh, my Lord, you'd think heaven had come down. He was so proud of that, and he drove it back to Mexico. So you have to start teaching people and demonstrating to people to become a worldwide giving church to missions, so that everybody will start thinking the same way. We had a lady that was actually, her husband had died. They were all members of our church. And she was from the Philippines, and he was an American. Well, he died, and so she was by herself. Now, this woman at that time was probably in her 50s, or even maybe 60s, I don't know, because she was a very young-looking woman. But she was Asian, and so she went back to, she felt led to go back to her home, which was the Philippines, into her village and the land that her parents owned. She built a church, missions. I mean, she built a Bible school. She dedicated the rest of her life to world evangelism in her native country. So she'd come home every once in a while, or a year or two, and she'd minister to the congregation, and I'd always sit the missionaries down, and I'd ask them, I said, what do you need? What can we help you with? She looked at me and kind of grinned. It was so funny. She said, Pastor, I need a weed eater. I said, what? I need a weed eater. I said, are you talking about a weed eater like you buy at Home Depot? And yeah, she said, I need a weed eater to weed eat the weeds around our property. Oh, my Lord. I thought, well, we can certainly help you with that. So we had somebody go down and buy our weed eater and leave it in the box. And so she, on her way home, she checked that in the box. She checked that weed eater at the luggage counter, and she let me know later, oh, thank you for the weed eater. And she had some of her Bible school students using that weed eater to trim the weeds and grass around her buildings. You have to teach people to think bigger than just us four and no more. And that's part of being the church. Now I'm going to move on, and we've got a lot more to cover in just a short time. The Bible says in Matthew 5, now remember, we're talking about the supreme task of the church. Let's go over to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, and let's look at verse 16 through 18. Matthew chapter 5, and let's see, verse 13 through 16. Matthew 5, 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt hath lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing. You ever had salt lose its savor? Let me tell you something about salt. Salt in its purest form, sodium chloride, salt in its purest form never loses its savor. It's only when it's mixed with another compound. That ought to help you understand. Pure salt never loses its savor. And I got some other things to say about that. It's no more good but to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot of men. You are the light of the world, and a city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. So this assignment that Jesus is teaching, Sermon on the Mount, he says, you are the salt of the earth. Salt does not change the food. Salt preserves or flavors the food. Salt preserves. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it gives light to all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So Jesus is telling them, you're going to have to be salt, to season, to preserve, to purify. related to the church, let me say this way. Salt is not a commodity. Salt is the character of the church. When I was in the Navy, and I was aboard 2 different ships for two years at sea on 2 different ships. And we sometimes, the captain would have the radarman, sonarman find a rain shower. Hopefully it wasn't too hard, not a hurricane or anything like that, but he would tell them to look for, because he wanted to run the ship through the car wash, through the ship wash. That was his terminology. And what he meant was, because when a seagoing vessel, whether it's steel, as our ship was, a destroyer, or whether it's wood, and I was on a wooden ship in the beginning on a minesweeper, and it's all wood. But whether it's wood or steel, if it stays in the water for very long, salt builds up on the hull. And if you take a ship out of the water that's been at sea for a long time, there's barnacles underneath there. There's salt deposits. And he would run our ship through that squall and wash it off. At the same time, he would tell those of us that were young seamen on the deck crew, he'd tell us to get in our bathing suits. The Navy issued you bathing suits. And get in your bathing suit and get over the side of the ship with a brush. And you would wash the ship down. You'd get all the salt off of it. And you might have heard sailors being referred to as old salts, S-A-L-T-S apostrophe S, salts. Well, he's an old salt. What does that mean? That means he's been at sea a while. It means that he could be hard or crusty. It means he's been at sea. Well, he's an old salt. It means he's been at sea for a long time. Salt preserves. If the church loses its purity, preserving ability, and its seasoning, then it sinks back into disorder and worldliness. Join me tomorrow. We're going to continue with the supreme task of the church. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas and where you're watching too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on X at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.